It's always good to be here. As mentioned, it is Veterans Day weekend. I know we may have a few people out traveling because of that, but we certainly do want to just be mindful of the great sacrifice that's been made through the years by those who've served in the armed forces. We remember those who put their lives on the line in the police department and other places like that, our own folks here. And your sacrifice and your willingness to give yourself is not unappreciated. Last week, we looked at a sort of a military-themed lesson, and I said we're going to have two of those. And this week, we're looking at the Old Testament, and we're going to look at a battle story as we explore a winning strategy for the Lord's army. That's not army, it's army. But I want to share with you this war story. It's a story of a battle that was led by an experienced fighter, a veteran, if you will. Again, the Old Testament, if you'd like to follow along, our text is going to come from 2 Samuel chapter 10. The story is also found in 1 Chronicles chapter 19, but we'll use 2 Samuel as our basic text. And while you are finding 2 Samuel, it's somewhere in the middle of the Old Testament. Go to the middle and go to the left, and you'll run across it. But let me introduce you to our cast of characters. First of all, there was Hanan. Hanan is the king of the Ammonites. They're the bad guys in our story. There's Nahash. That's Hanan's father. He was the former king of the Ammonites. Ammonites. That's almost, talk about keeping it all in the family. Well, it worked that way back in those days. Then you got David. We're familiar with David. He's the third of the kings of Israel. He's the king of the Israelites at this time. And then you got the captain of David's army. And he's a man by the name of Joab. So keep those names in mind as I give you some background for the lesson. And I start with Nahash. This Nahash character, he's one tough customer. In the 11th chapter of 1 Samuel, we read of one example of his hardline approach. He decided to conquer the Israelites who lived in Jabesh Gilead. And they said, well, could we have some conditions of peace? Can't we just get along? Can we sit down and talk? And he said, I'll tell you what, I won't come to war against you, and I will spare you if you will voluntarily, all you men, allow me to put out your right eyes. Well, granted, that was one way to disable people from becoming warriors, because especially with bows and arrows, most people being right-handed would use their right eye to use a sight. Even so, it's extremely cruel, and the text brings out that part of the reason for Nahash wanting to do this was that he wanted to bring about not just the destruction, but the humiliation of Israel. If you keep on reading, and you can do that if you like, you'll find that, spoiler alert, God did bring about the deliverance of the Israelites, but that's a story for another time. As a matter of fact, eventually, David is going to subdue the Ammonites, at least for a time. But as we come across this story in 2 Samuel chapter 10, we find that for all of his warlike ways, Nahash had a little soft spot. He had shown some sort of kindness toward David in the past. Don't know exactly all that it was. And when Nahash died, David sent a delegation to show some kindness in return. So he sent a delegation that goes Hanan's way. And Hanan gets a little suspicious when he sees the delegation coming his way. And it's his response to David's delegation, just trying to do something nice, backfires on him. And that's what sets up the conflict here. Hanan is king of the Ammonites. He's very suspicious of David, decides he's up to no good. We're going to have a battle. Now, let's get to our text. 2 Samuel chapter 10. Let me read the first 5 verses. It happened after this that the king of the people of Ammon died, and Hanan, his son, reigned in his place. Then David said, I will show kindness to Hanan, the son of Nahash, as his father showed kindness to me. So David sent by the hand of his servants to comfort him concerning his father. And David's servants came into the land of the people of Ammon. Then the princes of the people of Ammon said to Hanan their lord, do you think that David really honors your father because he has sent comforters to you? Has David not rather sent his servants to you to search the city? to spy it out and to overthrow it. Therefore, Hanun took David's servants, shaved off half their beards, cut off their garments in the middle, at their buttocks, sent them away. It's quite descriptive, is it not? When they told David, he sent to meet them because the men were greatly ashamed. And the king said, wait at Jericho until your beards have grown, and then return. All right. Now you see what's setting up the conflict that's about to follow. Hanun's advisors, they can be great sometimes, aren't they? Listen, Hanun, you know, some funny business is going on. David's not simply trying to send some goodwill ambassadors to comfort you. These guys are spies. They're trying to get the upper hand. They're going to come against us. And so we'll teach them a lesson. What happens is the Ammonites end up cutting off half their beards. That doesn't mean their beards were this long and they made them this long. They cut half their beards off. They cut their garments off just a little bit below the waist. Now, this was a great indignity in the East. You say, well, they didn't poke out their eyes. Yeah, but beards were highly respected back in those days. Man, I see people all over the place now that I need to be giving respect for. And, you know, it really is unnatural to shave, is it not? As a matter of fact, it's November, right? Movember, grow those mustaches to show that you care and all of that. But yeah, I'm a shaver. Some of you aren't. Back in those days, though, beards were so special that sometimes they would take an oath. I swear by my beard. Now, that's when you get into serious territory. You're not just swearing, but you're swearing by your beard. They were common in that culture. I mean, everybody thought, what's going on with Duck Dynasty when they hit the scene? Well, nothing new at all. Beards were common, and so were long robes, at least longer robes, long flowing robes. They were a symbol of pride. They were connected with wisdom. You know who wore short robes back in those days? Slaves and servants. And so these servants of David, they're shamed. They're humiliated. They look strange. They got half a beard going on. And so they're set aside. Grow those beards out. I mean, it was such a shame in that culture. Just wait till it starts growing back, and then you can come around. Now, in the next 3 verses of 2 Samuel, if you're following the text, you're going to see a lot of names that are hard to pronounce. I'm not even going to read them, but I'm going to tell you what's happening in the next 3 verses. The Ammonites all of a sudden realize, you know, maybe we shouldn't have done that. That might have made David upset. He sent these ambassadors. Could it be that that's what it was all about? Well, they knew David was peeved. They knew there's going to be an upcoming battle. We got to fight against these people. What are we going to do? Well, verse 6 mentions 20,000 foot soldiers in addition to 13,000 other troops. Verse 18 mentions 40,000 Syrian horsemen. They got Syrian mercenaries. Imagine that, Syrian mercenaries. Well, this is Old Testament. It's a long time ago. The parallel account in Chronicles mentions 32,000 chariots as well. This is a major battle that is about to ensue. And all of these numbers, that's on top of the Ammonite army. Now, when David hears that the Ammonites are getting ready to battle, not only that, they've recruited the Syrians. He says, you know what? Calling in the captain. Joab, you got a job on your hand. And that sets up the scene for the battle. The Ammonites line up. They line up the entrance to their capital city. The Syrians are out in the field. They're going to come in from behind. It's going to be the old squeeze play where God's people are caught in between these two forces. And as Joab approaches for the battle, he finds himself in this squeeze, literally caught in the middle. The enemy is in front of him. The enemy is behind him as well. Now, you ever felt that way in your life? Where you're just trying to get through, and no matter which way you turn, they're coming at you. And maybe you felt yourself in that kind of position. Well, what do? First of all, spoiler alert for this story. They're going to get through it, okay? But what do? Well, I've got 4 suggestions as to what do you do. And I pulled them right out of Joab's strategy on this occasion. When he's right in the middle and the forces of evil are coming in a squeeze play, what do? Well, this veteran comes up with a plan and a strategy, and it's the one that he employed that brought about victory, and I think we can learn something from it. First of all, Joab matched the abilities of his soldiers with the work at hand. Listen to verses 9 and 10. When Joab saw that the battle line was against him, before and behind, he chose some of the choice men of Israel and put them in battle array against the Syrians. And the rest of the people he put under the command of Abishai, his brother, that he might put them in battle array against the people of Ammon. The Syrians were better fighters. The Ammonites knew that. That's why they had hired them. I mean, as good as we are, the Syrians are better, and we want you to help us. That's why Joab put his choice men against the Syrians. He put his best against their best. He looked, and he looked at the work, and he matched the abilities of the people he had on hand with the work that needed to be done. We need to be doing that in the church. I'm going to tell you right now, we're looking right now at our ministries and opportunities for service in this church. And we're going to be really unveiling a lot of things at the first of the year. There's a place for everybody here to be involved in one way or another. I want to challenge you to start thinking about that. For everybody to be doing something. Did you say, but there's so many things I can't do? I guess if you want to say that, okay. But there's so many things you can do. We don't all have to be doing the same thing. And Joab looks at that army and says, you're better suited to do this, and you're better suited to do that. As a matter of fact, in his choice, he's sort of saying, some of you might not be as talented in this area as in that. But it's okay. He matches the abilities of his soldiers with the work at hand. I'm reminded of what Paul wrote in 1 Corinthians chapter 12 as he writes to that church in Corinth. Listen, beginning in verse 4. There are diversities of gifts. Well, I have different gifts. Same Spirit. There are differences of ministries, but the same Lord. There are diversities of activities, but it's the same God who works all in all. But the manifestation of the Spirit is given to each one for the profit of everyone. To one is given the word of wisdom through the Spirit. To another the word of knowledge through the same Spirit. To another faith by the same Spirit. To another gifts of healings by the same Spirit. To another workings of miracles. To another prophecy. To another discerning of spirits. To another different kinds of tongues. To another the interpretation of tongues. To another this and to another that. We all have differing gifts and abilities. But one and the same Spirit works all these things, distributing to each one individually as he wills. Have you ever thought about the fact that you can do something better than someone else is because God's given you that gift? Or maybe you're not quite as good in some other area. That's the way God's made us. It's okay. He just wants us to fit into the body. As the body is one and has many members, but all the members of that one body being many are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body. Whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, we've all been made to drink into one Spirit. For in fact, the body is not one member, but many. We have different talents, gifts, and abilities. And the best we can do in fighting the forces of Satan, in going out and doing good, is to match abilities with the job at hand. That's exactly what Joab did. And each one of us can serve a role in God's army. Each one of us can be doing something for the betterment of this church. Each one of us can be doing something for the betterment of this community. And I want to challenge us to start thinking about what is it that I am just uniquely situated, suited for. More to come. Joab matched the abilities of his soldiers with the work at hand, but then secondly, he had each part of his army ready to help out the other. Listen to verse 11. Joab said, if the Syrians are too strong for me, then you shall help me. But if the people of Ammon are too strong for you, then I'll come and help you. Oh, he picked and said, here's what looks the best, but it might not go exactly the way we have things planned. Call for help, and we run to each other's aid. I remind you of the words of the Apostle Paul in Galatians chapter 6. He says, brothers, if anyone is overtaken in a trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself lest you also be tempted. When one stumbles and falls, we all rush to the aid of that person, and vice versa. Bear one another's burdens, he goes on to say. Bear one another's burdens, and so fulfill the law of Christ. In 1 Corinthians 12, he said there should be no schism in the body. All members should have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it. Now you're the body of Christ and members individually. We're all part of this same unit, part of this same body. We're not jealous of each other. We rejoice with each other. We weep with each other. You know, when you stub your toe, your mouth goes into action. Hopefully in an appropriate way. Ouch! That really hurt. You know, you can avoid those kinds of things by wearing shoes. That's a lost cause. You need to wear shoes so your eyelids can see where your feet are going. That's another case. At any rate, we need to be working together in unison. We all fit into this one body. Jesus wants his church to work like that. He describes himself as the head. He's the head of the body, the head of the church. But one's an arm, and one's a toe, and one's a leg, and one's a torso. And we're all engaged in a common mission. And we're all fighting a common enemy. And the enemy is not us. The enemy is Satan. And he'll do everything he can to tear at us and to divide us. What Joab was doing was making sure that each part of that body, each part of that unit, each part of that army was willing to help out the other. And I think we can take a great lesson from that when it comes to fighting against Satan. But then thirdly, very simply, Joab encouraged his army. Look at his words in the first part of verse 12. Be strong, be of good courage, and let us be strong for our people and for the cities of our God. Joab encouraged his army. In spite of the way things may have looked at the time, again, read the text and look at all the numbers and the thousands and thousands of chariots and foot soldiers and horsemen and all of that. And it might have looked overwhelming, but he's offering words of encouragement because with all the numbers you can stack up there, there's still something that's got to go into the equation. That's God. If God is for us, who can be against us? And we look around in our world and our culture, and Christians are hopelessly outnumbered? Oh, no. Outnumbered for sure. Hopelessly? Not at all. We have God on our side. That is, if we are on the side of God. And that's the call. To be on the side of God. When you plug God into the equation, no situation is hopeless. And yeah, the numbers are always going to be larger in the world. And the way is broad, and a lot of people find that, and we can just go, there's nothing we can do. Yes, there is. We can be on the side of God. I remind you of the words of Hebrews chapter 10, beginning in verse 24. Let us consider one another, so as to stir up love and good works, not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together, as is the manner of some, but encouraging one another. And so much the more as you see the day approaching. The writer was talking about times, I believe, just like these. Even back in the first century, the church would regularly gather, and there were some people who said, I'm just not going to be involved in those regular gatherings of the church. Jesus, yes, but the church, no. And he says, don't be forsaking those times, because one thing that can happen when we come together is that we can encourage one another. I would throw out that just your presence may be more encouraging to someone than you'll ever know. You think, I don't know if I feel like it. And you don't realize it, but there's someone, they're perked up when they see you here. Who is that? Should we have a show of hands and see who we match up? I'm telling you, just our presence can be encouraging, not to mention rolling up our sleeves and doing things together. Let's never neglect the ministry of encouragement. We have different ways of thinking of you cards. We don't mention them so much, but you can write a note to anybody. We'll make sure it gets to them. You don't even have to buy a stamp. A phone call. Just a word on the way out the door. Always be looking for ways to lift one another's spirits. That's one thing that absolutely ought to be taking place during these times together when we're here. face to face. And it ought to continue when we go out these doors through the week. Joab encouraged his army, and you cannot minimize the importance of that kind of thing. But one more thing I want to pull from this story is this. Joab left the outcome to the Lord. You see his words in the second half of verse 12. May the Lord do what seems good to him. Here's what he was saying. The battle belongs to the Lord. I mean, we sang it. That's what Joab was saying. The battle belongs to the Lord. Listen to these words the Apostle Paul had to say to the young preacher Timothy. 1 Timothy 4. For to this end we both labor and suffer reproach, because we trust in the living God, who is the Savior of all men, especially of those who believe. We need to trust God completely. Even when, especially when, it appears overwhelming. When we look and go, there's no way. Don't forget God. You see, because we walk by faith and not by sight. And I look and I go, it's not adding up. And God says, I'm right here. I'm right here. But, do you trust me? Do you trust me? Joab left the outcome to the Lord. Listen to verses 13 and 14. Joab and the people who were with him drew near for battle against the Syrians. And they fled before him. It's almost like resist the devil and he'll flee from you. What is it, James 4:7? Yeah. And when the people of Ammon saw that the Syrians were fleeing, they also fled before Abishai and entered the city. So Joab returned from the people of Ammon and went to Jerusalem. Now, fear can be contagious, and it was on this occasion. And wow, if the Syrians are running, we better get out of here. And wow, how about that? Encouragement can be contagious too. You look around with your eyes, no. Leave the outcome to the Lord. And they won a great victory on that day. And if you keep on reading, you'll find that David also won a victory against the Syrians, the dreaded Syrians, in a follow-up battle. And how did all of this happen? Well, look at Joab's strategy for victory. First of all, he matched the abilities of his soldiers with the work at hand. Then secondly, he had each part of his army ready to help out the other. Then he encouraged his army. And finally, he left the outcome to the Lord. I think it's pretty good strategy even today for the Lord's church and for us as we try to work together. Joab had a good plan. He had a great strategy. This veteran, he knew what he was talking about. He put that plan into action. And so I asked, have we turned everything over to the Lord? Are you willing to offer encouragement to your brothers and sisters in this family right here? Maybe you need prayers from these brothers and sisters. We always offer that opportunity when we come together. We always offer the opportunity to say, I'm signing up. I want to be in the Lord's army. And when this morning, before we leave, we can witness your baptism into Christ. You know, Jesus says that he's calling people to repent, to believe in him. He who believes and is baptized will be saved. But I remind you, this army, it's all volunteer. You decide whether you want to, by faith, be baptized into Christ. And you can do that before we leave here. You can sign up. You can volunteer to be in the body of Christ. Are you willing to do that? To be a part, to work together, to enlist on his terms, to give yourself through baptism. If there's any particular public need we can meet, to make it convenient for you, we encourage you to come to the front right now while we sing this song together. Let's stand.